Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacey.
All right. Thank you for joining us today and leaning in on this upcoming conversation with my good friend, Mary Jo Irmen from the States. It's been a long time in coming, and I'm just honored. There's lots that had to even happen in order to have this manifest. So I'm just extremely grateful.
Good.
And I love you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am super excited about this.
Yeah. So I was just tossed and turned a little bit about, what are some things that we can chat about that any North American listening in on this could really take away and get value from it? Because really, I mean, overall, farming is farming and ranching is ranching and making a living is making a living. And we both have around a similar time frame that we've been sharing the infinite banking concept, although you got right to business and was just, I feel like you were a lot more focused on how can I bring value to a lot more people. You just knew how to scale a lot better than I did. Just in the sense of like writing a book right away and putting yourself out there. You are not a shy woman. That is for sure.
Well, that is a very kind way of putting it.
Well, what would you say? You said yourself, you have German passion. So you're like just...
Right. But the book came because farmers are ornery, as my husband would say. I would say blockheaded. But they didn't listen. So what do? You got to write the book.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be here having this conversation had you not written your book. And I know that there was many Canadians that ended up reading your book, just getting introduced to it through a podcast, I think first was really the thing. You'd be on a Working Cows podcast or Barn Talk or various podcasts. Mm-hmm. And then the Canadians would get turned on. You're like, hey, I'm not licensed in Canada. So talk to...
Nor do I want to be licensed in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
One country is enough for me. I can only handle one.
Are you licensed in all the provinces or just...
States, you mean?
I mean states.
I'm like, I'm not licensed in any, Winnie. I am licensed, I think 48 maybe.
Oh, wow.
We have clients in like 48 states. I'm licensed in the majority of them, but that is enough for me. And there's so many different rules in Canada. And so here's the thing. I don't need to know everything about everything. And so it was just super helpful that you stepped in and said, hey, let me learn about this farming thing and how you do it, and sat down with me and trained with me. And so then I was confident that my farmers would be taken care of between you and Lacey, and I don't have to worry about it.
I have really, truly come to enjoy having all of those conversations. And I, of course, with every conversation I have, I learn more every single time because every situation is different and they're all in different stages, right? Whether they've never actually done it before and they're just starting from scratch, or whether it's like 5 or 6 generations in, and no one conversation is ever the same.
No, even though they all think that they're the same, they're not the same. I mean, you can have 2 farmers right beside each other and they are not going to farm the same. They're not going to handle their money the same. They're not going to have generational wealth the same. There's so many things that they're not going to have the same. And so everybody thinks that, oh, I'm farming, I'm kind of cookie cutter. And that's not it. But even like, as much as you're learning, I had to learn as well, right? I grew up on a farm and a ranch. And so I understood the world of that, but I didn't know how they farmed in the South compared to how we farm up in the North. Like, I didn't know that. Canada would be more of, Saskatchewan is more what we do here, right? But then you get to the West, and I don't know, you guys actually have trees over there and mountains and stuff. And so it's different. It's like the South. Farming is very, very different down there, and different types of crops, and just You have you guys are going to very much have your ranchers versus your farmers. And we have that as well. So there was a lot to learn. Even people like you mentioned about people getting started. The typical operation to get started down here, I see it all the time. And when you meet with enough people, you just kind of get the flow of, oh, this is the typical thing. This is how it goes. And it's 5 years. If you're buying from scratch, you have so much infrastructure that you are going to be 5 years in before you actually turn a profit. You have fencing, you have buildings, you have cows to buy, you might have some equipment to buy. And so we learn all that stuff the more farmers that we talk to. So now I can say, yeah, I'm sort of an expert, right? Talked to over 2,600 of you. And so I can say that, yeah, this is typically what's going to happen. This is what I see. It's just it's just funny because everybody thinks, oh, I don't want to give you my family dirt. Oh, you got it, honey. You got the dirt is there, and we're gonna bring it up. It's not like we want it to gossip about, but we need it for planning, right? We can't plan for the future if we don't know who the vulture is gonna be, if we don't know how the succession plan's gonna go. We need to know all of those things, and so, yeah, everybody's got one.
Mm-hmm. And it's no different too. When a farmer or rancher decides to move forward with setting up the infinite banking process for themselves, it's like starting a new business. It'll take that same amount of time till your own banking system becomes profitable as well. It's
right.
really
you
the same.
Gotta capitalize, Nelson said.
Yep.
You're capitalizing your operation, you're capitalizing your bank. Everything has capital tied to it.
Yeah. And one thing that I really find interesting that you guys are allowed to do in the States is that, I can't remember what it's called again. It's like is it like the 1034? Or when you can move from one life company to another without having to medically qualify.
A 1035 exchange?
Yeah, 1035 exchange. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's you could do that with cell phone numbers up here. You can move from one cell phone company to another cell phone company, and there's no real penalty for that, right? Mm-hmm. But with life insurance policies up here in Canada, you can't do that. Unfortunately, you have to re-medically qualify.
It's not the end of the world to not be able to do it. I rarely do it down here even.
Okay.
Because there's still requirements with your MEC that you have to adhere to. And so it's not always feasible or it's not always smart to do it. There's a lot of people that do it, and that doesn't mean you should do it. It just means you really want to make commission sometimes. If you have a good whole life policy, why are we going to 1035 that? If you have an IUL or a UL, depending on your age, maybe we should 1035 it, maybe we shouldn't. I don't know.
Well, what about if a person has a term contract with the company that doesn't exactly have an ideal whole life contract? You know what I mean?
Term insurance doesn't have anything to 1035.
Oh.
So a 1035.
Coverage. Oh, no. Is it only for permanent?
So we're not 1035ing coverage. We're just taking their cash value from their existing life insurance policy and moving it to a new policy.
Oh.
And it buys death benefit, but all that's doing is taking, let's say you had $50,000 of cash value. We're going to take that $50,000 and put it into PUAs in your new policy. But what happens is it allows us to put that in above and beyond the MEC. And so if you have term, we're not converting it to a new policy. It's just 1035 is only to move cash value so you don't get taxed.
Okay. So it's only for permanent life insurance contracts.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't actually know that.
Do a 1035. The 1035 is so that we don't have a tax on the gain. Typically a UL product does not have a gain, right? That's kind of comical in the first place. And so the only time you would have a gain is if it were a whole life going to whole life. But if somebody's converting a whole life policy to a whole life policy, they're probably criminal anyway. And you shouldn't be doing it because there's no reason to be canceling a good whole life policy to start another whole life policy.
Exactly. When I started mine over 10 years ago, a lot of my policies, they're not quite as flexible or necessarily as attractive as they are today, but it works. I mean,
Right.
I can do business, like I can be my own banker. I can own all my own debt. I don't have to do business with the banks. And it's not the perfect contract, but they sure do make it a little bit easier here now,
Yeah.
just with
Yeah.
a little bit more flexibility, which I really like.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really interesting that it's even hard for our current industry to really tackle is there's a lot of Canadians married to an American or an American married to a Canadian, and they're either living in one country or another. I can't say what it would be like in the States, but say, for an example, we'll talk about Lacey. She is actually born a Texan, but she's married to a Canadian. So something that I was learning as I'm going along is that if you're a US citizen and you get any sort of asset, doesn't matter if it's a life policy or a piece of property, you got to consider that into your estate planning because it's even if you might end up spending most of your life in Canada, but you're still a US citizen, your cash values or your asset could become taxable on the American side, whether you like it to or not. And so we've attempted many times just talking to different professionals about how can we plan a little bit better. So I'm not sure if you've come across anything your way in terms of like Americans and Canadians being married and
I
being
have
down in the
not.
States. Mhm.
I have not. I mean, I have a couple farmers right on the border, but my question becomes why would you have to pay US tax on something when you die if you're a Canadian citizen? Like, why would Lacey ever have to pay US estate taxes if all of her assets are held in Canada?
Because she's still a US citizen. You still have to file a tax every single year as a US citizen.
Even though she is in Canada?
Mhm.
So does she have to actually pay money to the US and she doesn't do anything here?
Not yet, but I will say that for the many people that I've talked to so far, it's been hard to plan whose name can be on what based on citizenship. So it's actually something like a work in progress, even for myself, to get some very clear answers from many different professions like tax lawyers, lawyers, accountants.
It's not something that I would even really dig into because I'm not an accountant, right? So I would just say go see your accountant.
Mhm. Some people become hesitant to open policies down here as a result
That
of
I've
it.
not run into. Like my Canadians are just as happy to open a policy if they're down here
Right.
and they can figure the rest out. Because I'm not their banker, Winnie. I will give you contacts of people I know and
Yeah.
I will know enough to be dangerous, but I am not going to hold your hand. I'm not going to take you through that process.
Yeah.
Because I'm not your banker. I'm not your estate planner. You need to do that yourself. So I don't have any of them. Like I
Yeah.
don't have the mixed piece of it. And maybe I do, and they've never said. We have clients with green cards, and all we care about is do you have a green card? So you're legal to
Mhm.
do an application. And if you do, great, fantastic. Nobody's ever asked me about it though.
How are you finding it like with the transition of, like has there been many different conversations or any concerns or maybe even opportunities that have come up now that there's been a shift in presidential power?
Opportunities? I don't know. We'll see what happens with the egg world has gotten a little bit like we don't some people
Yep.
are okay with it, some people aren't okay with it. We don't know, Doge has shut down some NRCS offices, which are government offices that help people with wells and fencing and that kind of thing. If we have tariffs, like I was kind of worried about the tariffs because of beef going in and out and wheat and durum and commodities just leaving the country. So I was a little bit concerned about that. I actually did my own podcast on tariffs a while back and how that all just comes back to the end consumer. But in Trump's favor is he's using the tariffs as a bargaining tool. And so everybody's been caving, Trudeau caved, China caved, like everybody's just kind of been caving at this point. So I don't know that they're hurting. John Deere is going to feel it if they don't bring their manufacturing back to the States and out of Mexico. He's going to tariff them, which I don't know how I feel about that one because John Deere will just bring it back to the States and then they're going to have to hire people that are more expensive. And then that's going to get passed to the consumer, which who knows, John Deere's probably passing that to the consumer anyway. Not a fan of Deere, just because the price of the equipment is insane. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens in the farming sector, what's happening with the country as a whole. Like Doge has been great, in my opinion. There's some swift moves that were made that probably could have been thought about a little bit before we made them. And, some positions of people have lost their jobs just due to the fact that they had gotten promoted and that job probably still should be there. But we'll see. I mean, at least the guy goes to work every day.
Yeah. Well, the last 3 months of conversations I feel like I've been having with, even before the presidential switch and even before Justin Trudeau did what he did, there was so many things that have made many Canadians just feel like not on stable ground anyway. And of course, it's been like that since 2020.
Here's my thing. If that is stopping you from doing infinite banking, Nelson started at the worst possible time. And you have got to learn to pivot. And so I told this to a client this morning. He's like, well, I don't know. He's got a bunch of money in savings and he's like 22 or something, right? And he was going to get this job that he hasn't gotten yet, selling crop insurance. And so he's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford this policy. And it's a whole whopping $4,000 a year. And I'm like, it's $4,000 a year. You're giving up access to $1,200 and you have quite a bit of money in savings. And, he's nervous about it, and rightfully so. I'm conservative and that's all great. But I said, are you sitting around eating bonbons all day? And he's like, no. I said, you're a hustler. Yep. Well, are you going to hustle to pay your premium? If you commit to a $4,000 premium, you're going to hustle to find something to pay that premium. Yeah. Then what are you worried about? Right? And so there's really two types of people. And this is just something that I've seen lately that's just driving me bonkers, is there's really two types of people. There's the people that are going to sit in their bed and cover up their head and cry about the fact that everything is so hard. And then there's the people that are going to pivot and they're going to go out and they're going to find their way and they're going to do all their things. And it does not matter who the president is. It does not matter what's happening in the economy. It does not matter. We had people go through the vid and they lost one business and found an opportunity the next day for another business. And they just kept on moving, right? And then we have other people that are still like 5 years later, oh my God, I don't have anything and I lost everything. Put your big boy pants on and figure it out and go pivot. Nobody is handed anything. I don't care if you're in Canada or if you're in the U.S. We all have the same opportunities. And when I started this business, the people that I started with, this was a super interesting conversation that I did not understand what he was talking about until just recently. He said to me, the guy that I started with said, Mary Jo, are you the kind of person that when things don't go your way, you stay in bed? Or are you the kind of person that you get up and you go do things? And I'm like, who stays in bed? Well, that's a dumb question. And so I said, well, I'm not staying in bed, right? Like I just get up and do things. And then he said, well, I'm kind of the person that stays in bed. Like if things aren't going my way, he kind of gets down and whatever. And now I know exactly what he was talking about. Because as we have other colleagues in this industry, we can see, like I had people yelling at me right away when I started in this industry. And I still kept on calling people. I still kept on talking to people. I did not stay in bed. And it really doesn't matter. Like Nelson started at 23% interest. And guess what? If he can afford to pay premiums, then he knows when times are good, he's going to be able to afford to pay premiums. So what are you waiting for? Like, my God, like the perfect moment, that's like saying I'm going to wait for the perfect moment to have my child. It's never happening.
Yeah. Or I'll be happy when this and this happens. Then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's not a certain set of circumstances that you can ever wait for. Like, because that's too many things outside of your control. Yeah. Just control yourself. Start with you first.
And if you understand what you're doing with the policy, like this particular client, I said, you're going to put $4,000 in and you're going to have access to the majority of that money. Yes, we have to capitalize, but we're moving some of it from one hand to the other. Like you still have access to it. And so if we don't think we can afford to start, it's because we don't understand how infinite banking works, right? we don't understand how the life insurance policy works and how to run it through the system. And if you don't understand how to run it through the system, then we should probably be asking to have more meetings to set that up.
So I know I've had some conversations with you before, back in before 2010, when you got into doing IBC. You were in general insurance before and you were introduced to it. Can you recall, was there one particular moment that made you go, okay, I need to be sharing infinite banking?
Yes. The first paragraph of the first chapter of Nelson's book. When I read Nelson's book, well, at first I was introduced to these local yahoos, who I'm going to call yahoos, because they talked to me for an hour and never used the word life insurance, never used the word infinite banking. And I was like, what are you doing? Forex trading? What are you guys doing?
Oh, making it super mysterious?
Yes. Oh, they still do it. They still do it that way today. 6 meetings before they tell you it's life insurance.
It's like Amway, the old Amway. They didn't ever tell you it was Amway. Just, it was something else.
So people, as you're listening to this, there's life insurance in the process of infinite banking.
Yeah.
But they didn't say anything. And so I took home Becoming Your Own Banker. The first paragraph of the first chapter, not the introduction, the first paragraph of the first chapter of Nelson's book says, if you take all the money in the world and you divide it equally in a very short time, the top producers will be at the top, or the top income earners will be at the top, and the bottom will stay at the bottom, right? That resonated with me. And I was like, this dude is right. And I don't know who he is. And I don't know that I even know what the rest of the book was about, but I like him because of that one thing. And that is because my uncle and my dad used to say, if you took all the money in the world and you divided it equally, the top 3% in 3 years is what they said. The top 3% will be at the top and the other 97 will fall right back into place. And it is because the top 3% understand how to utilize money, right?
Mm-hmm.
They understand how to run a business, yada, yada. And I was like, this is insane. Everybody, and then once I actually understood the concept more, everybody has to know about this. I had the 2 meetings with those people, one with them, and then they brought their expert in who explained it to me. And I left, I wasn't even down their hallway and I was already calling people you got to hear about this stuff. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I don't know. I'm a quick start. So
yes,
I quit my job in 2 weeks. I was like, everybody's going to love this. So I quit my job in about 2 weeks and I had $10,000 and I was like, let's go get them.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. Don't recommend. Have a little more money. Because I was broke. That drove me to get out of bed every day, not cover my head up with the sheets and cry about myself and go, oh my God, nobody wants a life insurance policy.
Yeah, well, thank goodness. I mean, quick start. Okay, just backing up a little bit. There's some people who don't speak the Colby language, KOLBE language. So quick start just means Mary Jo is the type of person where she doesn't necessarily need to know everything about everything in order to take action.
In fact, I need to know
less.
Less is more. Less is more.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so here, I'll just show you something really.
I've gotten a little bit better as I've gotten older to do a little more research. Oh, that's funny. I have mine in my drawer. Yes, Winnie is not a quick start if you guys are watching. Winnie is a 4. And so let's just give an example about a quick start versus a non-quick start. So can I take over your podcast for 2 seconds?
Yeah, for sure.
So Winnie and I, once a year, we try to hang out together for 2-3 days. And we go to eat at a restaurant, right? And we're eating, and Winnie has a million questions about the menu. I find my answer. I find what I want, and I order what I want. I might subtract or add a few things. Winnie has a bunch of questions, and then she's still not certain after the 5th time that the waiter or waitress has been by.
And it also depends on how much, how hangry I am. The more that I haven't eaten.
So I can't let you get too hungry. We got to eat sooner. Is what you're saying? I don't know that that's going to matter, people. I really don't think that that's going to matter. I've not experienced the Winnie that can make a fast decision. And so it is, but my husband is a 3 quick start. I am an 8. So if you looked at Winnie's thing, she's a 4. And so the higher the number, the more likely you are to just get things done. And so I'm an 8 and I'm like a 3, 4. So I don't need a lot of research. I don't need things done in order. I just need to get started. And then I figure it out along the way. Where Winnie is not that person.
We can't all be the same.
I know. This is why we work together well. So it was definitely like I made that decision, got right into infinite banking, started telling everybody about it. Wasn't even sure it was legal. Like I was like, this is crazy. I'm sure it's legal. These people aren't in jail, but they might be going to jail. Because I had just got out of a bad Forex trading deal.
Oh.
That guy ended up in prison. So, and I did do my due diligence just for everybody watching. I was not a super quick start over that deal. And that guy ended up in prison. And so I was like, you guys are slimy. Like, things are not looking up to par here. And then I did my due diligence and I read a lot of books before I got started. I, went to the insurance commissioner, took my tests, like did all my stuff. But when I knew it was good, we were good to go.
Yeah. And for myself, it was, I guess what really drew me in was just having been a recovering single family real estate investor. And it was also like at the time, Jason Lowe, Richard Canfield, we were all like real estate investors up here in Canada, and the subprime market hit. You learn really fast, especially when you're a real estate investor, what the relationship is to the bank when things go south.
But what a great lesson. Here's the thing. Had that not happened, you may not be here.
Yeah.
And so for all the bad things that happened ahead of or before, that just brought us to where we're at, right? Like I hated 401ks and IRAs. So I was always looking for something different. And when this landed in my lap, it was absolutely perfect. And very interesting that I learned from the lady who was our daycare provider. Well, our daughter was at that daycare very minimal. Like it was not very long because she was not the best provider on the planet, but it was enough time for all the stuff to just be aligned correctly so that I had the information and here we are.
Yeah. I would even say like if Jason and Richard weren't even real estate investors the same as all of us, we wouldn't have had no idea of how, what it would be like to work together previous to that, because we were actually sharing. Have you heard of the Money Merge Account program through the United First Financial? That's actually an American company. And it was like a computer program that shared how you can get rid of all your debt in the quickest period of time possible. And the same company, they offered they don't give credit where credit is due, but they shared something, they shared the infinite banking concept, but they call it something else. They call it like the banker's table or something like that. And then that's how we discovered that we weren't quite sure if it was here. And then it just kind of became an exploratory discovery process here in Canada. And yeah, just from there, we got it going on the Canadian marketplace. So that's been over 15 years ago, not quite 20 years ago yet.
The very same thing that led Nelson to look at his policies and reevaluate his policies led you, Jason, and Richard to the same thing, right? And so we need those pieces. And back to what you had asked earlier about what's going on in the country, what's going on in anybody's personal life. It doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we have a change in presidency and now we have a president that is, however you want to look at it. Some people think he's disrupting. Some people think he's doing a great job. I don't really frankly care what side of the aisle you're on, what you're doing, because you could be going through a divorce. You could be going through a new child entering into the family. You could, whatever the situation might be, a job loss, a business partner's breakup and everything's disrupted. And all of a sudden that's going to bring you to the infinite banking concept because you're now going to question, what have I done all these years that should have been different, or how to protect somebody else from it. It's crazy how many emails I get that people are like, Mary Jo, I'd love to be on your podcast and just talk about how bad our family situation was and how we got out of it and how the bank stole our farm or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And as that's great, that's awesome. As much as I would love to have the, all the bad issues on the podcast because that would get a lot of traction. We're not here to talk about all the bad stuff that happened. We're here to talk about solutions going forward. And Nelson
Amen.
created a solution. You guys needed the solution. My solution was very different. I didn't come into infinite banking because of anything negative. Well, the 08-09 crash, but I already hated 401ks and IRAs well before that. That's why I only had $10,000 there because I never saved money there. And so I was not in a financial ruin. I did not go through some traumatic event to find infinite banking. I was always just looking for a different answer for what I was doing. So it doesn't matter what's going on. Everybody's got something in their life that, as Jason says, or as Strategic Coach says, if you don't change, if you look ahead 3 years, what is going to be different than where you're at today? 3 years isn't very long.
No,
and if
it's a blink of an eye.
look ahead and you're not doing anything, you haven't started your policy, you haven't started your business, you haven't done anything. Why? Because you're waiting for Trudeau to work some magic. You're waiting for Trump to work some magic. All you're doing is sitting around complaining and not getting anything done.
Where I would even say sometimes too, like there's the people get started with IBC and then just they get it started, but then never use it. And it's definitely for using.
Well, Nelson talked about use it or lose it is one of the human factors. And we just talked about this I don't know who I just talked to about this. Oh, I think John and I did as we were recording our podcast, that we're reviewing Nelson's book. The main reason this is going to fall apart is you, the owner of that policy. It's no different than saying, how come my business didn't work? I'm the owner of the business, but how come I'm broke? Because you're obviously not working, right? Or you're not marketing right, or you're not doing whatever. You're not paying attention to your business. This is a bank. If you started a bank on the corner, would you just neglect it and be like, oh, I put some money in, I built my bank, I don't ever have to use it? Absolutely not. You should be using them. The difference is, if they're not calling you and I, how are they going to even know how to use it? Right? And so we can only do as much as we can do. And you're going to get busy with your business, with your farm, with your family, whatever it is, you're going to get busy 100%. But when you get hungry, do you just ignore it and not eat? No, you eat. And so you have to keep feeding this knowledge and this information back to you. Like, it's so interesting when you start to really go through Nelson's chapters and you really study the book, not just read the book. There's a difference. When you start to study the book, every single human problem our clients have is in that book. And because he used parables to tell the story, people don't understand it.
Yeah. I think he used parables because he was a Christian. I mean, the whole Bible is based on parables as well.
It's just how Nelson's brain worked.
Yeah.
It's not how my brain works. Like, I would have preferred he just said what needed to be said.
Well, but that's you. Yeah, that's you to a T.
Yeah. Hence why we ended up with farming without the bank and life without the bank. Because it tells you what needs to be said, and then you can go back to Nelson's book and read your parables. I did not know why we were talking about airplanes for years.
Like analogies, yes. Yes, I suppose.
Like, I don't know why we care about cans of peas, Nelson. I don't understand. Like, just tell me. Why do I care about who owns the gold? And those with the gold make the rules. Who cares about what Willie Sutton did? Like, I don't care that he robbed a bank, right? Like, I didn't get it until you really start to study it. And that's why, like, we're doing on our podcast, we're really breaking down right now every chapter of Nelson's book, and we're doing another review of it. And I've done it once before in my podcast, but we're going to do it again. Because if you're like me and your brain doesn't work that way, Because
Right.
I've said to Nelson, like, what? Have you always been like this? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, God rest his soul. Such a good person. You know what? One of the things that I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to gain this as a personality trait, but he could take something very serious and make it very funny. Well, to me, like when he was actually at the hospital just before he passed, he called up and he was like, yeah, I just wanted to call you and tell you what I did for my birthday. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in shit because I didn't call him before on his birthday. I'm in trouble. And he's like, no, 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 you're not in trouble. Guess what I did? I did something super expensive. And I'm like, Nelson, what did you do? He's like, I went to the Rosewood Hospital.
And I got a pig heart or a pig.
No, I can't. He fell or something. He fell. He fell.
Oh,
He fell.
he
And
he called me too. But didn't
yeah,
he have, was this his final surgery that he had emailed everybody and said, I
yeah.
might start eating straw or hay or something after this? I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was like, yeah, I'm going to get something from a pig. And then he like was joking about turning into an animal afterward.
Exactly. So yeah, just the ability to take something so serious and just make it more lighthearted, which I think maybe perhaps was the intention of all the parables, just to make it more relatable.
I think it is a matter of, Nelson always said it's the how you think. It's all about how you think. And if you aren't thinking, the infinite banking concept is a practice in imagination, reason, logic, right? And if you're not using imagination, reason, logic, you're not going to get it. And he forced you to do that through the book. And it's infinite. The infinite banking concept can be used for an infinite number of things. Well, how many clients do we have that say, well, can I use it to send my kids to college? Can I use it for false teeth? Can I use it to go on vacation? Can I use it for operating notes? Can I use it for a tractor? Can I use it to buy cows? It's infinite, right?
Yeah,
And we are so trained to not think like that.
Yeah, because there's so many terms and conditions on existing things. Like when someone else is the lender, there's only certain things that you can use it for typically. So what I like about what you were previously saying, like the best time to start a policy is in the worst of times.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's great when things are certain, but when things are uncertain, this is really great too. And I also wanted to add or clarify to what you were saying, like you were looking for something different because you didn't trust the 401ks or you didn't like them, period. So I guess to quantify that too, it's not that IBC is an equivalent, it's not like an investment, but it is another place to warehouse your money in a much more effective way.
Well, I
Yeah.
wanted liquidity because I wanted to buy apartment buildings. I mean, I wanted to do the things in Robert Kiyosaki's books and I couldn't do them because I was listening to Dave the Dipstick, right? And I'm like, well, I can't, how can I do this when I have to have everything paid off and I should have money for all that stuff? And it was just like, my husband is on the side of the road where he just wants to buy everything today and have fun today because the guy thinks he's going to die the second he retires, right? And I'm like, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Like, we're going to save up our money and then we're going to retire. And we both were on opposite sides of the spectrum, and infinite banking just allowed us to do both of those things. Here's the thing. People that don't start right now because times are bad, you're asking the wrong question. You're saying, I can't, instead of saying, how can I? By you not getting out of bed, that's you admitting that you can't do something to yourself versus how can I? And it is a proven fact that our brains cannot think about a solution when we are focused on a problem. And so the question should be, how can I start a policy? Winnie, Lacey, how can I start a policy?
Mhm.
Because our brain is looking at money very differently because we have been trained to think that way. We are looking at money very differently than other people are looking at money, right? Somebody messaged me today and said, Mary Jo, I want to start a policy, but I can't because I have $60,000 of credit card debt at 30%. And I think I should get that paid off. And then they've got this HELOC thing, whatever they're doing. And then they want to pay a car off. And I'm like, the bigger question, you're looking at how can I get this policy started and where this goes. And my question is, why are you spending so much money on a credit card? what is happening financially in your home? Because you also told me you're high income earners. So what is happening? I have a lot of questions that go along with that. And that is what we're doing when we're meeting with clients, right? We're like, we're not just saying, oh, great, this is how much we can allocate because that's what your financial advisor said. We're looking at the whole thing. Like a doctor can just look at the fact that, oh, Winnie, you came in with a patch on your face. And so we don't know, or your eyes are swelling shut, right? Let's just use that one. Oh, I don't know why your eyes are swelling shut. Here's some medication versus, and I heard you say this in your last podcast, that you wanted to go for functional Chinese medicine.
Yeah, I did.
And so you're not going to go to a Chinese medicine doctor and they're going to go, oh, here's some medication. They're going to be like, what's going on with your gut? What did you eat? What are you allergic to? What is happening in your system that's causing the eyes to swell? Right? And that's not how financial advisors are like, oh, well, your pill is your IRA. And we don't really care about the gut health of what you're doing with the rest of your finances. Just give me 10% and we'll call it a day.
Yes, super transactional for the most part for the rest of the financial industry. Ours is definitely about process. And we have, like, our love for sharing this with everyone is so much greater than what we have to do. And we have our work cut out for us, Mary Jo. Like, so much education goes into sharing what it is that we do. Like, no, hardly anyone has ever questioned opening up a bank account as much as just even looking at IBC. For some reason, we come off super suspicious, and yet it's time tested, and it's like one of the most conservative things that you can actually do. And yet people would rather gamble their money away on much other things.
Well, I had somebody ask me last week, they're like, Mary Jo, so what happens if the dollar crashes? I said, what's going to happen to your savings account and your IRA if the dollar crashes? Well, yeah, I guess it won't be there. I said, so you are concerned about the life insurance company, and if the dollar crashes, and they've been around 200 years, when we came off the gold standard, we've been through all these pandemics, but you are not worried about the bank if the dollar crashes? Like, we are putting such a different standard. What is the value? Winnie, how good is your company? What are they putting their investments in? How long have they been in business? How long have you been in business? Are you licensed in all these provinces? Have you had any complaints against you, right? Are we asking our financial advisors about where the money is stuck, how long they've been in the business, what their likelihood is that you're going to make this money, that there's guarantees there? We are not asking anything. And this is funny because I was born in 74. So yes, happy 50th to me, people. It's interesting because IRAs in the States, IRAs and 401k started in 74. So they're 50 years old. And we call those traditional. Yet life insurance is 200 years old. And annuities are super old. That's where retirement accounts used to be. Your pensions used to be in annuities.
Annuities, yeah.
And we're questioning those things, but we're not questioning the 50-year-old saving system, investment system of IRAs and 401ks. And yet we're looking at boomers every single time we go into Walmart. They're there greeting us and saying, hey, welcome to Walmart. Or we have a company down here called Menards. It's kind of like a big, like Lowe's type.
Oh, like where you can get home renovation type things?
Yeah, like lumber and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And so who does Menards employ? All these people over 65. Well, why? Because they were told to put their money into this IRA system that's a whopping 50 years old, not time tested, but yet we believe it because that's the noise and that's where everybody's putting their money.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that because I'm sure they would much rather be doing something else. And luckily too, most of these places that do hire people that are 60 and above, I mean, hands down, for the most part, there's a different kind of work ethic that comes along with that era in time too.
Yeah, so I'm glad they're there. Benefit. We get some customer service.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Now, I'm a millennial and Gen Z lover. Like, I love that generation, but every generation has their lazy, entitled little brats. And, but typically that generation, if they're working, the lazy, entitled ones aren't going to be at Menards or at Walmart. They're going to be at home But
Yeah,
it
pros and cons.
definitely is like we've bought in, we hold, it's so interesting to me that we hold life insurance to a very different standard than what we hold investments and IRAs. We hold the infinite banking concept to a very different standard than what we hold rates of return, real estate, all that stuff.
hmm Yeah, something as time tested as life insurance companies, basically the end result of having a lot more financial control, it almost feels not as believable until you really start experiencing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very obvious. It's there. It's just that Uncle John and Aunt Susie aren't doing it. And Cousin Joe said it's a bad idea. And so we're saying, hey, we can't do it, or that it's bad. When in fact, we don't educate ourselves. We don't do any due diligence. It's like all these stupid congressmen down here saying TikTok is bad. I was watching the news the other day, and one of the hosts on this, it was like a roundtable thing. And they're like, I've never used TikTok, but it's really bad. Honey, if you've never used TikTok, then
Zip it. Exactly.
you can't have a comment about it. If you've never read Nelson Nash's book, if you've never read Farming Without the Bank, then you don't have the ability to have a comment. If you've heard about it, but you've never read anything, you still do not have a voice at the table because you don't know what we're talking about until you educate yourself. I will not go into a farmer and say, you have bad farming practices. I wouldn't be putting down that fertilizer and chemical. Why you got anhydrous on there? Why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? Hey, you do what you want. I am not in a position to tell you how to farm, but I am in a position to encourage you and share with you how to think about money. We got to think.
What's interesting, actually, a bit of a side comment here. Do you remember the T. Harv Eker Secrets of a Millionaire Mind? Peak Potentials? No, none of that?
I heard of it.
Okay, well, here in Canada, it was a huge thing. And I won't begrudge them because I wouldn't be partly where I am today if I didn't actually go through their 3-day intensive, like how to have a millionaire mind. He used to have a tagline that used to be printed in the newspapers. I can tell you what your financial blueprint will be in 3 minutes, which was pretty enticing when I was a single parent, $10,000 in debt, making $9 an hour and going, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? I can't keep doing what I'm doing. Anyways, in one of his programs that he had, he even had shirts printed. Don't think, don't think, don't think, don't think. And I'm thinking, there's such a dichotomy of what, there is really a lot of noise. But in this particular case, we really do need the time to think about where are we going, where if you kept doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting the same results. And with that being said, read the book in order to have a voice. If you want to have an opinion about this, get in touch with Mary Jo through her podcast, Farm Without the Bank, or, ours, the WinEH podcast on the Rancho Way Show. And we invite you to take a look at the case studies in either book, the Canadian version or the U.S. version, because that's where we can help you visualize and show you kind of like what it can be like now to potentially the end of life. And so if you're wanting your brain to wrap around, how can this impact me for in the short term and long term? I think the case studies. I mean, you got to read the whole book in order to get the case studies, but
yeah, you shouldn't even be going to the case studies because the thought process is the first half of the book. Mm-hmm. And so if your thought process is wrong, you're going to just look at the numbers and then you're going to have some question for me or Winnie that's going to say, well, what's your rate of return? And Winnie is a lot nicer than I am, but I may come through the video camera. I mean, this is just, we're asking questions that are answered in the book. And so do your due diligence to read the book. Here's an example of people that don't do stuff. So we were with family over the weekend and one of our family members said, did you know that Burgum made North Dakota a sanctuary state? And I do not like our ex-governor is an idiot. And so I was like, oh, that's nice that he did that on his way out, way to leave us as a sanctuary state, right? And I was mad about it. And I knew that this particular person doesn't always do their due diligence. So I reached out to some of my friends that are in the legislature and said, hey, what's going on with this sanctuary state stuff? Like, this is what I heard. Well, he did not make us a sanctuary state for immigrants. It was a whole different thing. And I'm like, okay, so now you're out there spreading rumors about how North Dakota is a sanctuary state, and we are not a sanctuary state for immigrants. And so not doing your due diligence and saying, hey, infinite banking is bad, whole life is bad because Dave Ramsey said so, or because grandma said so, or Uncle John said so. If they haven't actually done their due diligence and they have an IUL or a UL, or Dave hasn't, you take everything gospel out of Dave, and Dave's never even held a investment license or a life insurance license. And so now you're taking everything out of what context. He says is gospel, but yet the guy is creating cash flow and making money off of cash flow. Okay, so Dave is not saving money and working a 9-to-5 job. Dave is a business and creating cash flow. So we have to look at the big picture, and we just want the quick answer, and we want somebody to tell us that instead of go do the due diligence.
Yeah. Well, as always, Mary Jo, it's that time because we're already in an hour. Time flies.
Yeah.
Time really flies.
We could do this for 5 hours, Winnie.
So come check us out on our podcasts, read the book, and take the time to comment and just shoot us some feedback if you got any, but only once you've read the book, because otherwise, like Mary Jo says, zip it. Don't say anything until you read it, okay?
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.